Hi, Karisha.
Hello.
Thanks for agreeing to do this. And you're my very first episode of the Wedding Pros podcast. I've changed the name already. It was going to be something completely different. But at this point, obviously, we're out of COVID. You've just come out of another bout of
Round
COVID.
2.
Yeah. So that was a business killer, wasn't it? How did you get through COVID without dying a death like other people have done?
Stayed at home. I was sensible. Just kind of stayed at home, and I was sensible, and I looked after myself, and took all the necessary precautions. But it did have the biggest effect on our businesses. So
yeah, tell me about that. So how did? Because obviously, I went 14 months without doing a wedding at all. So how did you go on with that?
I don't even remember how long I didn't work for, but I just remember sitting there, hearing all these things about, these army officers are going to patrol the streets and all of these things. And then it was like, oh, hi, Karisha, I'm really sorry, but I think we're going to postpone our wedding. Oh, hi, Karisha, I think we're going to postpone our wedding. And it was just one after another after another. And it was scary because at that point I was thinking, you guys are supposed to be paying your next, your next invoice.
Yep.
And I wasn't getting that. And
Nope.
then I had clients messaging me saying, I think we're cancelling. Can we downgrade the cake? Or downsize the cake? Can we, just cancel and get a refund? And at that point, we weren't prepared. We had nothing in place for such a thing.
Did.
And we all of us lost so much money.
Yeah.
Which was rubbish. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a tough time. So now, Channel 4, Extreme Cake Makers. How did that all come about? Because I've seen you at weddings for years and years and years, and then one day it was just like, oh, Karisha's on TV. And it's just like, what, really? So I'll have a look at that, and there you were.
Yeah.
So how did Channel 4 kind of approach you? How did it all come about?
So I used to exhibit loads, and one of my industry friends who used to work for the company that I used to exhibit with was contacted by this company that creates extreme cake makers, and they were like, do you know any Asian cake maker, Asian wedding cake makers that are really out there? And so he put my name forward. They called me, and it was like a month long of interviews and stuff, and then I had to do video calls and show them my workspace, and they loved my workspace. This was my old workspace so much because it was just so it was like a blank canvas. They could move stuff, and it just worked well for them.
Yeah.
And then I went on about 2-3 holidays, and I just didn't hear anything. And then I got a phone call saying that, and they were like, we've been waiting for you to let us know whether you want. And I'm like, I've been waiting for you.
Okay.
So and then that was it. And then within 2 weeks we started, and the first one that we shot was one of my best friend's wedding cakes. So that was really nice. And then it just kind of went after that. Then it was series after series, which was just lovely.
And how much of it is contract? How many times do they kind of come back to you and go, yeah, that was nice, but can we reshoot that bit and do this bit? Or is it genuinely sort of they just follow the ups and downs as they happen anyway?
They do follow the ups and downs, but it wasn't them, it was me. I'm really particular, so I would be like, oh no, can we do that again?
Okay.
And also I would have to say to them, I sound terrible, can we, can I say that? And it would just be constant. But generally they would just follow from the very beginning, all the good, all the bad that would happen along the way, because bad things do happen to us. It's not like we have this perfect smooth run with making cakes. And then they would air it.
And so get into the actual cakes then. I've seen so many different designs, and it always amazes me that basically a cake has to be 3 or 4 tiers, and it's just like, well, how do you get creative with that? So how do you even start with, because wedding cakes have to be that traditional shape and that traditional thing, don't they? So does the bride and groom or the whoever actually kind of come to you and say, oh, we've got this idea for a cake? Or do you suggest you have a bank of ideas where you can just go, or a combination of, how does it work? Talk to me about how that works.
I don't, well, when I first started, I would say I dealt with customers who would be like, I want this, and I was fine with that. I would just recreate it, and that was it. But then I feel like after you've been doing it for a couple of years, you kind of find your feet and you know your style. And now it's like, if they come to me saying, oh, can I have this? I'm like, no, I don't do that. But this is what I can do for you. So yeah, it's just about, learning about them. Like, I've had so many wedding planners come to me and they're like, I've got this client, can you do this? And I'd be like, well, I can't work directly with you. You can't be the middleman. I need to speak to the clients directly, because then I get to know them. I get to know their style. Like, I recently had one client and, the wedding planner was the middleman, and I just, without being mean, I didn't need that. I needed to get to the directly to the client. As soon as I got to her, I knew exactly what she wanted. It's not like she even had to, explain so much. I just knew. So yeah, it's just finding out about them, learning about them, seeing what they like, their style. And then I do have a bank of ideas. And also, like you said, you said that, wedding cakes have to be like, the standard 3 tiers. It's not like that anymore. Things are just so different. Cakes have become art. And, we can have them like staggered, separated, upside down. We can do them, I don't know, just odd shapes. Like, there's nothing, everything's like, different now. So it's not the normal traditional style.
Earlier on there, you sort of said there's things that you don't do.
Yeah.
So what give me an example of something that where a bride might say, oh, I really want this idea. And you say, actually, no. Yeah.
So like, they'll bring me other cake makers.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like a really normal thing to do.
Yeah.
What they don't know, what a client doesn't know, is that you bringing someone else's work to another cake maker. It's not like the greatest of compliments, is it? Because
no, but in the client's head, surely
it's just
like a
Pinterest world.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't mind at all. Like, I'm not one of those people, but I will just say, no, if you want that, then please go to that, cake maker. Because at the end of the day, I've been in a position where I've worked so hard. Like, for example, which cake was it? I did a cake, I think it might have been the Doha one or the Claridge's one. And I worked so hard on that design, and someone in France completely ripped it off, like copied it to the T.
Oh, wow.
And all they changed was the initials on the cake.
Okay.
So I messaged this cake maker, and I would never do this normally. I'd be like, I've worked so hard on this cake. It literally does take blood, sweat and tears. And I know people think it's just a cake, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's our time investment of thinking of these designs and coming up with the intricate details. So anyway, I messaged her and I was just like, would you kindly mind crediting me? And she just replied back saying, I don't understand what you're saying.
Really?
Yeah, which was quite funny. But I would think to myself, I would never copy someone else's design, because at the end of the day, I know what they've probably been through to come up with that design, and think, what, I've got this amazing design. Let me sell it to a client. If they love it, good for them. They'll order that. So yeah, I would definitely not copy.
And in terms of hours of work, because I remember when we were in Kenya,
yes,
and I walked into your room at some point, and we were all off having a lovely jolly, going on safaris and things, and, and generally having a ball, and you were stuck in this small room, and there were hundreds of those little
petals.
Yeah. And you were just like, oh, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one, and it's just like, whoa, and that table was full of petals.
Yeah.
So in terms of man hours, and also the other part of that amazed me was that you were in a completely different kitchen there. It wasn't your tools. Is that a word? They weren't your tools and bits and pieces. And yet you still managed to craft all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that cake reveal was staggering. It was amazing.
And when I do watch that video, sometimes I'll just go, when you're thinking, what am I doing with my life? Like, am I doing well? And then you go through your social media and I look at that video, and it just does make me feel proud.
Yeah. But so getting back to the actual work, because I'm sure some people will just think, okay, well, it's cake. In the same terms that people think that video is just shoot. Oh, it's easy to edit. Bang, job done. Couple of hours, that'll be all right. how long? What's the longest time you've spent on one creation?
I'd say about 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you worked on that gig. It was at Grosvenor House, and it was a spiral cake.
Okay.
And I've done it a few times since then, and I'm like one of these people where I hate doing the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did that spiral cake, and for 3 months we made sugar flowers, and on top of that, then we had like 9 hours of assembly. So this is just 9 hours getting the flowers onto the spiral.
Okay.
So yeah, that's probably the longest.
9 hours to assemble.
Yeah, that's just 9 hours that's not even me baking, that's not me ganaching, that's not me covering in fondant.
No.
Nothing. That's just 9 hours me putting the flowers onto the spiral.
Wow.
Yeah, and it doesn't even end there. Like, you add on, and then you're like, oh no, let me just keep adding and adding and adding.
Yeah.
Because you sell a client this dream,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you're making it, at the end of the day, it's your name on that cake.
Sure.
So I have to then still go further. I don't just stop where what I sold to the client. I then have to go further to make sure that it's the best it can possibly be. So sometimes you do go overboard, and you do just keep adding. And that cake, as much as beautiful as it is, it's a nightmare. You just don't stop, and you just keep making flowers and adding until it looks the fullest it possibly can.
And do you get the satisfaction of, post event, then the bride or groom or family or people coming back to you and saying, Karisha, you really nailed that, and that how fantastic that was? Do you get that feedback after the event, or more than often not?
I feel sad saying this, but more than often not.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I do think like no news is good news.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but I do get the odd few clients. Well, I do get a lot of clients that will message, and I've had clients that message me on their wedding night to say thank you so much. Yeah, which is so sweet.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I get clients that don't message at all, which is such a shame, because I can understand from their point of view. They've paid us to do this job. We've done it, and then that's it,
Move
kind
on.
of.
Yeah.
But also, it's just we've worked so hard for you. Like, I would never go to a shop. I would never go to a shop, buy something, and not say thank you to the cashier.
Sure.
I would always say thank you, and then you leave. So
you feel like kind of job done.
Yeah.
You were talking there about sort of getting inspiration from your socials when you sort of look back and see past work. So how important is the social media aspect to your business? I mean, everybody seems to be TikToking this and TikToking that and Facebooking this and Facebooking that. Does that actually get you customers, or is that there to serve, and this sounds a bit cheeky or a bit rude, but does it serve your own ego to have that out there? And how much are you giving away on your socials? Like that cake maker in France that completely copied what you did. That's a risk for sure. I mean, for filmmakers as well. People put stuff out and then it just gets completely ripped off. So what's the balance between having a social media presence and not giving away all your trade secrets and
Yeah, I think our businesses only survive with a social media presence now. I think, how else really, how else really do people see our work and things like that? Of course, business comes from other places like our website, but that is still kind of social media.
Yeah.
And then you can get recommended by wedding suppliers and things like that. But I definitely think, without no social media presence, you're not going to get...
You're sunk.
Yeah, you're not going to get what you want. Most of my business, I'd say 99% of my business comes through Instagram.
Okay.
Because it's a portfolio of our work. So, sorry. It's a portfolio of our work, so people will see that they can scroll. It's so easy. And they can just contact you, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And then you got a booking.
Yeah, and I guess the customer might get inspiration as well from seeing previous work and say, oh yeah, can you give that for, can you produce that cake for us? So yeah, interesting. And now, of course, you're a mama.
Yes.
So congratulations, by the way. So how has that affected your family work time balance? Because as a single person, with no attachments, you can work 24/7
Yes.
and not really feel it. Now you've got a husband to think about, you've got a child to think about. So how do you kind of get that balance right? Has it been challenging getting that balance right?
It's definitely been challenging, and I don't think you ever really get the balance right until they start going to nursery, which he will be from next week.
Okay.
It's hard, I have like such short windows in the day to work, and if I'm not doing cakes, and it's like house chores and things like that, and then in the evening once he's gone to bed, that's when I can work. So it's tough, then I'm up till like silly o'clock in the morning. Before it was harder because he was younger, he was waking up through the night, so like I'm working till late, then I'm like up a couple of times during the night, and then it's like the same thing, and you have to be fresh for them during the day, and I'm like, I don't want to like leave him or just let him get on. I am like 100% there, giving him attention all throughout the day until he naps and until he sleeps. So it's hard, and it does affect, because I was saying to like my family and friends that my career is my identity, like it's who I am, and to have had to let go of that for the last couple of years has been hard, because back to back, COVID hit us, then I got married, then I was, then it was just like the house and the baby, and it's just all a lot. So I feel like I've kind of not been Karisha Creme De La Cakes for a little while. But now that I'm settled in our home. My little one's older now, so he's going to nursery, and now I can finally have my own time. And now we've got the workshop here, so it's the convenience of everything is just so much better.
When you were saying there about your career, are weddings a stepping stone to bigger and better, or is it is Creme De La Cakes weddings and events forever, and that's all there is? I can't imagine there's much beyond doing what you do. So is there a career progression? Yeah, thank you.
That's all right.
Is there a career progression that you're stepping onto, or is this it?
No, this is definitely not it. I remember even when, I'd say like 3-4 years ago, people would come up to me, and this is when like Extreme Cake Makers was happening and stuff, and they would say, "You're doing so well," and I'd be like, "No, I'm not. Like, I have not hit my, my target," which I don't even know what it is, but until I feel in myself that I've hit that point in my career. But yeah, I just have so much more to give. My brain is a creative brain. It doesn't stop thinking. It's constantly churning, new ideas and new concepts. But unfortunately, right now in my life, for me, I just don't have time. Yeah. So that's where, that's where my downfall is. So until Reese is in nursery and he's in a better routine, that's when I can start putting out all these things that I've got in my bank of ideas, and So.
I'd ask you about your bank of ideas, but I'm sure we'll be straying into trade secrets.
Yeah, it's probably boring for you.
No, not.
I'll be explaining something, and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
But that's the fun of it, I think.
Yeah.
But when you very first started out, I mean, how did you? When you first started out, let me just think about this. Edit. Okay, so talk to me about your journey into the business. How did you wake up one morning thinking, I want to make wedding cakes for a living?
No.
Or did you see someone else doing it and think, that's a great way to earn a living? Or did someone mentor you? Or just talk to me about your entry into the kind of business.
So I was at university. I was studying events management because I actually wanted to become a wedding planner.
Okay.
And funnily enough, I did a couple of days with Madhus. And I just saw how hard it was. And not so that I don't work, because the hours that we work now are ridiculous. And I was just like, no, thank you. I don't really want to do that. And hats off to every wedding planner, but it's just, and catering company and events company, whatever. It's a lot of work. So anyway, I was at university. I was studying events management. You're chilling in the evening with your friends, and you're like, oh, do you know what? Let me make a cake. So we would make cakes in the evening while we were watching Friends, and then that would be it. And I just enjoyed it. I never ever thought, like, oh, Karisha, you make such nice cakes. You should do this as a job. No, it was just never like that. Then I came home, and for everyone's birthday, I would go and buy Betty Crocker cake mix. And I would make my brother's birthday cakes, all of my family's birthday cakes.
Right.
And so I would use Betty Crocker. And then I started obviously baking like my own recipes and, developing, my own cake recipes. And then just from there, it kind of snowballed. I was also marketing, so I was doing marketing.
Another word.
I was also doing marketing. And I was working full time. And if they ever listen to this, which is bad of me to admit, but I used to call in sick so much because I would have loads of cakes and I couldn't balance it. And my MD at that company was incredible. He used to say, Karisha, you're wasted here. Go and pursue your dreams. And even at that point, Andy, I didn't even know that I wanted to do cakes. I just enjoyed it. I got busier, and that is just what was happening. So I asked him, look, what if I go part-time? Because my parents will kill me if I quit completely. I went part-time, still couldn't handle it. I was still calling in sick some days. And then eventually I was at work one day and I wrote up my resignation letter on my laptop, and I just went to his office and I was like, I'm leaving. And then I went home that evening and I sat down with my family and I was like, I've quit. And they were like, why have you done this? So irresponsible. How are you going to make a living making cakes and things like that? And I was like, you don't understand this fire that I have in my belly to succeed and do well. And then, I did it. And then I did Asiana, the exhibition, and I got my first gig was at Grosvenor House. And after that, obviously, I think Grosvenor House back then, when you work there, you are, you get noticed.
You feel like you've arrived, I think.
I agree. Yeah. It's so weird.
It's funny how my opinion is diametrically opposed to that now. Wild horses wouldn't get me in the Grosvenor, which maybe I shouldn't admit.
But it's harder for you guys.
It's not even that. I think, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I think venues like the Grosvenor, as for instance, they don't hold the kudos that they used to hold years and years ago. And I think there's much more friendly venues than the Grosvenor. There's much easier venues to load in and out of the Grosvenor. And I think something that couples often don't think about is where the 2,000 guests are going to park and how the suppliers are going to get in and out. And for them, fair enough, they want their wedding in a posh place. But once you've shut the doors, it's just another room.
Yeah.
But I remember myself thinking, when I did my first one at the Grosvenor, it's like, wow, this is it. This is the big time.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't think it actually is. I think it's more about the couple and doing the best job you can. And lots of venues can be made to look great. And from a video point of view, I'm talking obviously, a lot of other venues can be just as fantastic and give all the suppliers and the couple and the guests an equally good time.
Yeah.
And I don't think, my opinions on Park Lane are what...
Park Lane is not easy to work out. But even still, I can imagine if we got another gig at Grosvenor, you do get excited because it does. I know it, once the doors are shut, it's just a room. But I do think that when you're there, there's a sense of is this even a word? But prestigiousness.
There is.
But I know that they're really difficult to work in. I've worked in. There was one venue that I've worked in recently, and I worked there 4 weekends back to back, and I did some Saturdays and Sundays there.
Wow.
And I tell you something, I would work at that venue for the rest of my life, and only that venue if I could, because it's just so easy. It's so easy. You just go down the lift, you set up, You go up the lift and they're not hassling about you about moving your car. You're not getting a £40 fine because, you know, you left your car for 1 minute extra. You know, you're not paying like £8 a minute for your parking. It's crazy. But anyway, so I was saying that I got a job at Grosvenor, and after that, that's when my career sort of snowballed. And when I tell you, mind my language, I worked my ass off. Like, I worked so hard. I didn't eat dinner with my family for like 8 months. I didn't sit at a dinner table with them. I just worked and I worked and I worked. I missed out on summers with my friends. I missed out on so much. And it's so sad, but as much as I love doing what I do now, I just don't know if I have it in me to do that again. Because I feel like life is different. I'm older. I want to experience things. I now have a family.
Yeah.
You know, I have friends who have children. We all want to do stuff together. So.
But you wouldn't have missed that period of your life for all the tea in China, I'm sure. That because that ultimately got you where you are today.
Yeah.
And so you've got people queuing up to. What do you think people actually expect from you if a client books Creme De La Cakes? What are they expecting?
The best looking cake.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone. I'm just saying that as in, they know. A client that comes to me knows my potential.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, you can look at my Instagram page and, you know, nothing looks the same. I know there's a lot of white cakes. All those white cakes look different.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to do the same thing twice. I don't think it's. I don't know, like, what am I if I'm doing the same cake over and over and over again? Like, it's boring for me. You are not challenging me. Sometimes it sounds so silly, but I feel like writing on my Instagram stories, like, guys, come at me, challenge me, you know, give me something crazy. My brain needs that tick. Because if I don't, it's just like, yeah, let's just do a round, you know, 6-tier cake with some flowers. It's boring. It's beautiful, but, you know, I don't want to think like that. I've done screens in TVs. You know, I've done crazy things. You know, I'm the one that.
Hang on, just rewind that. You've done screens. What?
So we did a cake at Grosvenor, and the theme was the groom proposed to the bride on in an ice rink. And, you know, I just thought, oh, what a lovely, you know, like movement. There's so much movement in ice skaters.
Yeah.
So my brother and myself used to work together, and we'd create structures that I'd put inside my cakes.
Yeah.
So we created the structure, and I had 6 iPad screens running around one of the tiers of the cake.
Wow.
And I had this like an image, like a video of an ice skater. It was stunning.
Wow.
Yeah, I miss those days, you know, of just, you know, running with these crazy ideas, you know.
Because I was going to ask you how you create something unique, because like we've alluded to it already, you know, round, white, and ultimately boring. So does that unique idea come from you, or that one clearly came from the client and their engagement? And
that's where you know how I said, like, getting to know them?
Yeah.
Like, you know, then I push this idea to them.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, trust me.
Okay.
Yeah, and
they did.
It worked. So.
Wow. I wish I'd seen that. So
I'll show you.
We'll have a look on your socials. So that must be quite an amazing feeling to create something out of literally nothing.
Yeah.
Because all you had really was, well, the proposal was in an ice rink. So you've got a weird brain.
I do have a weird brain. And it's so funny, you know, it sounds so silly, but sometimes, you know, when you're like getting ready, you're washing your face and you're rubbing your eyes, whatever. I feel like sometimes then it's like, you know, these ideas just pounce into my head and I'm like, where's my iPad? Find my iPad. I need to sketch this out. You know, even like sometimes it's like, you know, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and Jess was like, what are you doing? I'd be like, I just need to write this in my notes. I was like, I've come up with this cake idea.
Okay.
Yeah, so just so I know that I've got these, you know, otherwise sometimes when a client comes to you and you're not getting that vibe off them, you know, you're not getting like an idea or, you know, a lead off them. You're just like, what about this? You know, I've got these ideas. Do you like any of them?
And would you rather walk away from a client where you haven't got that connection, or will you pursue it and sort of going, no, we can do something amazing?
No, I will always pursue it, because then personally I feel like I'm failing myself.
Okay.
Like I've given up, and that's
Yeah.
not what I want to do. Like
Okay.
I will find something for you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
whether it's simple or crazy, but you know, we will do something.
That just rewinding a little bit, that you were telling me about a 9-hour setup. Was that actually creating the cake in the venue? That was actually putting the cake together in the venue?
No, I did it all in my workshop, and then
Okay.
we travelled with the whole cake.
Okay. What?
Yeah.
Wow. So, in terms of, I've seen, I've seen obviously many cake makers, and the setup times actually in the venue can be challenging, I think. So, how do you find working with other suppliers and trying to work around other people? I mean, I've seen dance floors that don't go down until the very last minute, and the cake maker is standing there tapping,
Yeah.
tapping their teeth with a pencil, going, "Hurry up!"
Yeah.
So how do you manage that? Do you have any communications with decor and event planners beforehand?
Yeah, like if I know who's working on the job, I will message saying, like, is the dance floor down? I always try and get that early, because you never know what's going to happen. But yeah, just go with the flow. You're always going to get it done.
Yeah.
And the benefit for us is that Asian weddings are always delayed. So we always have about half an hour extra to play with. So yeah, just try and speak to someone, or there's no point being like this. Oh, like, why is the dance floor not done? I need to sit at I'm not the most important person in the room. We all are, and we all have our time restraints. And sometimes the venue, it gives us such a short.
Yeah.
It's just difficult. We're all in the same position, so
Yeah.
just be patient, and it will get done.
And what would you say would be your career highlight? Would you like your number one cake, your number one? Do you have one, or is it just the last one you did? Qatar.
Honestly,
okay.
that.
Talk to me about that then.
The first thing is, I remember when I got the email, saying, oh, hi, I've seen this cake. And it was actually a cake. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was a replica of Moore Park that I did.
Oh,
It was a
okay.
little blue cake, and it had like a little room inside it. And obviously that market loves elaborate things. So she sent me this cake, and I was just like, she was like, only like a 3-tier cake that she's after. And I was thinking, you slowly suss out a client, and I was like, this is not going to be a 3-tier cake. This is going to be a whopper. So anyway, conversations started happening, and then I heard that it could potentially be in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
And I then waited out. I was so patient, because I always believe that whatever's meant to be is meant to be, So just don't stress. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, just cry or something.
Yeah.
So anyway,
After you've invested
so much
gazillion
time.
hours into something.
So anyway, I did this. I spoke to this client for a couple of months. In fact, it was about a year, Andy, because COVID was really bad there, and they were postponing.
Okay.
And I think in Qatar, they seem to, if I'm correct, they seem to have like seasons, and their seasons are a bit different to ours.
Okay.
So anyway, I did this sketch, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, this is happening now. They booked my tickets, they booked my...
Okay.
And I just remember this whole time, it's like I wouldn't allow myself to breathe, because I was just...
So excited.
I was so excited. I didn't want to say anything to anyone. I think I only told my mum and dad and my siblings and Jessel. And then when I knew that, I was going, that's when I started saying, I'm going to Qatar. And it's funny, because I know when you say it to some people, they're like, oh, okay. But what they don't realise is that's, well, obviously they're not going to realise it, but that's been like my absolute dream from the moment I started.
Okay.
Like I came into this market, and I was making these elaborate wedding cakes and stuff. That was my dream. And then I remember I was sat there. So the wedding was a ladies only event. And they see this day in, day out. So to them, some ladies are just chit-chatting away. And I saw the bride come in, and I don't even think I blinked. I just was so mesmerised by this whole wedding. Like, when I tell you, they leave no stone unturned.
Okay.
Unbelievable. Even when I was in the kitchen, I would be working on the cake, and I know I'm going off topic on the cake,
No,
because
no,
the
no,
whole
no,
thing
no.
was just unbelievable. And, you know, people would come in and be like, oh, the venue looks amazing. And I'd be like, you know, I do London weddings. London weddings are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I walked into that venue, and I swear to God, I could not even explain to you how incredible it was.
Really?
Just, it was like a dream. And it was just unbelievable. I can't even explain it. It just makes me smile so much at
I
how...
can see it
Yeah.
in you. Yeah.
And then just the cake, and then I remember I set the cake up, and even that was just such a long... we were there for hours. And then I set the cake up, and we had to leave because they were doing like rehearsals and stuff. And then the bride messaged me that evening, and she just sent me the loveliest message. And it sounds so silly, but I won't even delete that conversation because I just feel so proud of that moment. Like I done it. Brilliant. Which was just amazing.
It is so satisfying to think, you know, we're lucky in as much as, I think just pre-COVID, we went to the Bahamas, and we're such a privileged job where somebody will pay you to travel to Qatar or the Bahamas or Kenya. On the basis that what you create is what they want. Yeah. And I think, you know, for myself, it's we're such a privileged, it's such a privileged job to do, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, even Kenya, that was my first ever international wedding.
It was.
And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I had fun with all you know, I felt like we had such a good group.
Yeah.
And I just enjoyed the experience, and I feel like that gave me a taste of what I want for the rest of my life. So.
Yeah. So that was your biggest and proudest moment. What was the first time where you thought, yeah, this is it? Was it the Grosvenor one, the very first one?
Yeah, I'd probably say that, because, you know, you see all these weddings when you're coming into the market and you say you're doing this thing. That's what you're breathing. You see all these fancy weddings, and so I'd say definitely that Grosvenor.
And do any other suppliers inspire you? Sort of, I mean.
Yeah, I do look at, obviously we see everyone's cakes, but I never look at it as inspiration. Okay. Because that's not where my inspiration comes from. That's probably the best way I can explain it. I'm not inspired by other people's cakes, mainly because it sets trends, and then the last thing I want to do is be a trend follower, because then, you know, if somebody wants a cake that's in trend, I'll do it, you know. Yeah. But that's not where my inspiration is. Like, you know, I look in my garden, like, you know, my balustrades. Mm-hmm. That's my inspiration. Buildings, fashion, you know, that's where I get.
So you're walking around, never really switched off?
Never switched off.
Okay.
And I'm constantly, Jessel and my mum honestly hate my phone in my hand. But I'm just on Instagram. And if you see my Instagram feed, it's not cakes, it's like fashion, you know, like high fashion, buildings, architecture, all of these things. They inspire. My windows, you know, that can inspire me. My cupboards, you know, it's so silly.
So much can inform where you're going next with the next creation.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't really, like, for example, like if a decor company did a really nice centerpiece, that would inspire me. Okay. You know, because it's not cake related, because the main thing I don't want to do is copy someone else's work. Yeah. But yeah, definitely I do get inspired by weddings, and I would never ever think to myself, oh, I could have done that better, or, you know, or anything like that. Maybe I would have when I was first starting out. Yeah. But when you get to a point in your career and you're like, you know, that's what that client chose, and that's fine for them. Like, you know, it's not. I got no place to say I could have done that. Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, me and that cake maker are in different, you know, stages within our career, maybe. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think like that. I try not to think negatively, because I feel like it.
Just impacts.
It hazes your own mind. Yeah.
When you, if you weren't a cake maker, and this is a question I think I'm going to ask everybody on this pod, is if you weren't a cake maker and I could magically give you the tools to be great at anything within the business, I mean, you've sort of already said you trained to be an event planner, or you started out with those sort of ambitions. What's the one job where you think, I'd like to have a go at that?
Makeup artist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
I love it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'd hate to do the hours, even though we do stupid hours. But yeah, I wouldn't mind dabbling in a bit of.
Do you know, makeup artist is the one thing, it's the one supplier I've not yet thought of.
Oh, really?
For this part, yeah. I need to find somebody.
Someone.
Yeah, I do. So if you're listening to this and you're a makeup artist, get in touch.
Yeah.
Get in touch. Where are we? Okay, things that can go wrong, subsection B. I think the worst one I saw cake-wise was under the heat of the venue and the lights. It literally started collapsing. It started collapsing in front of our very eyes. I took a photo and and tweeted it, which is what probably what you shouldn't do. But yeah,
this is what I mean. Without being mean, I feel like some cake makers don't think about everything.
Okay.
You know, like you said, you know, you saw a cake collapsing. You know, I always say to my clients, you know, make sure the ACs are, you know, just little things like, it's just, I don't know if it's common sense, but, you know, like.
Well, I mean, more recent. That was quite a few years ago. More recently, I was filming a wedding in a marquee, and marquees bouncy floors, and so the cake maker, who I love, she's wonderful. She set the cake up, and then 4 dole players arrived, and it's just like, yeah, we're going to be bringing the bride and groom in, and the floor is going to bounce. And she had to literally stand there and hold the cake while the players were playing as the bride and groom came in because the floor was just, you know, doing. And she said at that point, she said, I don't want to do another wedding in this venue just because this, you know, and I think she'd had to take a tear off it as well on the day.
You have to do what you have to do.
Yeah. But any huge challenges like that for you?
I would say yes. I worked at Luton Hoo. This was like one of my first big wedding cakes when I first started out. I worked at Luton Hoo, the Walled Garden Inn, and their floor is literally a trampoline.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I set up this cake. Obviously, I was still learning along the way, so I did the cake top heavy rather than bottom heavy.
Okay.
So my 2 bottom tiers were dummy and the top 4 or 5 were real cake. And obviously it was such a hot day, and you know, the cake was just, it didn't drop, but it was like leaning. Yeah, it was leaning a little bit. I then went home, I got ready and I came back, and by then like my family were all at the venue. And my mum, as soon as I walked in, my mum looked at me and oh my God, I literally had like, you know, the dirtiest look. She was like, what have you done? That's so embarrassing. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, let me call the weatherman and ask him to reverse the heat. But yeah, that was one. And then another one I had was the Moore Park cake that I just explained. I set that all up, bearing in mind I filmed that for Extreme Cake Makers. We did that whole cake in 2 days, and bearing in mind I would never work that fast on a cake because at the end of the day you're rushing it. But I didn't. It was stunning at the end. I set it up, put it in the van, got to the venue. We finished at 4 o'clock in the morning filming, and then I slept for 2 hours. Then I had to be up at Moore Park early in hours of the morning to set up. I got to the venue, and you know Moore Park's got those horrible little humps. You know the ones that break everything. And then usually when we film, they stand at the back of the van, and then they'll wait for me to come out. So they'll film me coming out to check the van, saying, oh yeah, everything's fine, you know, I'm just going to set up now. And I knew that something wasn't fine. And I was like, don't film me. And I ran out so quickly, opened the doors, saw that the whole cake had like collapsed. So the room part had fallen off the cake and was like rolling around everywhere. And then I closed the door, and he obviously then came round, opened the door, and I was like, no, you can't film this. I was like, this is going to affect my business. Anyway, he filmed it. I had no toolkit with me that day because I thought I was fine, and I was on 2 hours sleep, so I was knackered. I had a pint of water, and luckily this was like a non-edible part, so I didn't touch anything like that.
Okay.
I used my fingers, and I used a pint of water, and I patched up everything. You wouldn't even have known that happened because I cleaned it up so well. And then they aired it, and I remember I was so nervous about that episode because people were going to be like, can't believe you've done that. That's so irresponsible. You're a professional cake maker. And the amount of messages that I had, on WhatsApp, strangers were calling me saying, I'm so proud at how you dealt with that. And I'm like, what is going on?
I think that's part of the thing. If you can deal with adversity in that manner and turn it into a win, of course it matters that the damage was done in the van, and how we wish that venues wouldn't have speed bumps, but your rescue of that obviously that showed the mettle that you've got, and the dedication to making it right for the couple. And that I think we've all seen things that have gone horribly wrong, and people have rescued it.
Sometimes things aren't in our control. Tables break, or things like that. But you just do what you can. You also get to a place in your career where you know what you need to do if things go wrong.
But that was an early one. Did you say in your career?
The Leaning Tower of Pisa was the early one.
Yeah.
The second one, I would say, it was definitely about 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember exactly, so it's not like it's too far along. But.
And so do you now carry you carry the lesson of that forward, and you keep tools with you, and so
always, but you learn. I was knackered. I wasn't surviving on like 2 hours of sleep, and it was I know it was hard. But
I think those 2 hours of sleep, from a video and photo point of view, which is obviously where I always come from. Events can just, like Kenya, you're supposed to be in one place, and then 20 minutes later you've got to be 10 miles away doing another event, and it's just like sometimes planners don't plan all that well, but that's another, that's another story. It's another one for another pod. So hey, listen, thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege to talk to you, and thank you for giving me your time. And look forward to it.
Yes, I look forward to it too. Thanks for coming over.
Thank you for being there. Cheers.